We'll call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, may we get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Bennett?
Here.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Here.
Mr. Franco? Here. Mrs. Goebel?
Here.
Dr. Osherik?
Here.
Dr. Pravola?
Here.
Mr. Burke?
Here.
Mr. Farr?
Here.
Mrs. Arnold?
Here. Superintendent, do you have some remarks for us this evening?
Absolutely. Good evening, board and Tunkhannock community. I'd like to start by acknowledging our recently graduated seniors. Our graduation ceremony was perfect. The weather was cooperative, the student speakers were outstanding. As always, the band and chorus, awesome. And the stadium bleachers were packed with the proud families of our graduates. It was such a good night. So I'd like to congratulate our seniors, Mr. Winsek and Mrs. Wood, for a great evening. If you've been on our campus, board, and community at any point over the last 2 weeks, I'm sure you've seen many contractors at our school. We have so many capital improvement projects happening this summer. I'm excited to have so many upgrades and repairs happening. These projects will certainly help extend the useful life of our schools, and I'm confident that everything will be finished before the students return next school year. In the June board meeting each year, the board is asked to pass a final budget for the next fiscal year. The same will happen here tonight. I will share much more information as we get to the budget on our agenda, but I want to point out a few things right now. Last month, there was a buzz of information about how our solar project will negatively impact the budget. That information was completely inaccurate. The solar project really has no impact on our budget, or no projected impact, or very little. For the fiscal year 25-26, not for this upcoming year, but for the next year, I'm confident the solar project will make a positive impact on our budget. You know, an item that is causing significant negative impact on this year's budget is the ever-increasing cost of cyber charter schools. Quite honestly, the cost is ridiculous. For our district, the increase in cyber charter costs for next year is more than the projected increase in our state funding. Our current budget is the financial equivalent of 83 local tax mills. Next year, our cyber charter costs will be $3.2 million, which is about 11 mills. Simply put, 13% of our entire local revenue is being sent to cyber charter schools to educate about 100 students. The increase from last year to this year is over $300,000. So if the board decides to raise taxes by 1 mil this year, essentially, we're just paying for cyber charter increases. The amount we have budgeted for cyber charter schools is the equivalent of salary and benefits for about 30 teachers. So 30 teachers to educate 100 students. That's essentially what we're paying. Common sense cyber charter reform is absolutely necessary. So I'm asking anybody that's listening, please contact Senator Baker, Representative Pickett, and tell them to support House Bill 2370. And doing so, if that gets passed, will go a long way to help this board, all of us here, keep school taxes flat. Tonight, I also want to announce that our September board meeting is going to be moved by 1 day. Mrs. Wood contacted me the other day. It's going to be held on Wednesday, September 18th. I know that's far down the road, but I want to give a notice. It's because the homecoming bonfire will take place on September 19th, so I don't want to compete with the bonfire. That's a loser for us. The bonfire is that 19th, so our board meeting that week will be on the 18th. In closing, I'd like to share that our students, faculty, and staff had a very, very strong year. I mean, sure, we have challenges, and we had some challenges, but I'm confident that our school district provided many dynamic opportunities for our students, and we will take a deep breath after tonight's meeting, after the budget, a decision was made on the budget, and over the next week or two, we'll take a deep breath, and then we'll immediately start gearing back up for the return to school in late August. Director Bennett was kind enough to visit my office yesterday, and we were talking, and, in talking about the school district, she said, and this meant a great deal to me, she said that things seem to be going pretty well right now, and I was absolutely thrilled with her comment, and I absolutely agree. That made my day. But thank you very much, and I look forward to our budget discussion later this evening.
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll open the floor for public comments on agenda. Oh, first I'd like to announce that we had an executive session immediately prior to tonight's board meeting on personnel matters related to specific staff. We'll open the floor to public comments on agenda items only. We will have 2 public comment periods tonight. The first is on agenda items only for tonight's agenda, and the second is on whatever you would like to speak to us about. Each comment is limited to 4 minutes per person, and you need to be a taxpayer, resident, teacher, or I'm sorry, staff or student or parent of the TASD school district to participate in tonight's meeting. If anybody wants to make a comment, come on up. Please state your name and your municipality for the board.
Bill Widener, Northmoreland. I just want to see if you can hold the number you did at the preliminary budget. I'm speaking for the elderly and the retired and the low income. And we'll go from there. And at one time, many years ago when I was on the board, when you're talking about, I don't know if you're going to be hiring any new teachers this year, if that's up yet or not, but they should hold it to a certain degree and X amount of credits. Last year, there was a teacher hired at the top end of the scale. You can't save money doing that. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Any other public comment on agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move along. Item 5 is enrollments that are there for everybody's review on pages 6 and 7. Do we have our kindergarten numbers for the fall yet? 131, okay.
As of right now, and growing.
Yeah. So if anybody still has a student in the district who would be prepared for kindergarten in the fall, I think you have to be 5 by September 1st. Registration is still open. Give them a call, bring them in, and get your students registered. I believe Kinder Camp is going to be going on, or has already started, or it's coming up?
Mary Jane, Kinder Camp? When is Kinder
Kinder Camp, we have about a little over 200.
Yeah, when does it start?
It'll start July 8th, go through August 8th.
Great.
Yeah, we have over 200 kids right now signed up for summer camp.
Oh,
I think about 90 of the incoming kindergarten kids have signed up for it.
awesome. All right, with that, our enrollment at the end of the school year ended up being exactly 2,000. So we finished off the year without dipping below the number permanently on the record books. Any other discussion on enrollments? Okay, we have the approval of minutes for the May 23rd board meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherek?
Yes.
Dr. Pravola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Under business and finance, do we have a motion for items 1 through 6?
Motion to approve 1 through 6.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherek?
Yes.
Dr. Pravola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Superintendent's report.
I'd like to recommend a resolution be adopted approving the personnel report as presented.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Personnel report.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherek?
Yes.
Dr. Pravola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
I'd like to recommend a resolution be adopted approving the conference attendance as listed.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Goldble?
Yes.
Dr. Osherek?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. I don't believe we had any committee meetings since our last board meeting. Do we need to schedule any coming forward? Okay, moving along. All right, item 10, unfinished business number 1, motion to approve the second reading of the policies listed, and there are 6 policies.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So the generative, Paul, if I can ask, the artificial intelligence, obviously that's new, that's something new. So
That's the one that is new. The first 5 there are simple language updates. That new one is the first attempt to try to wrap our head around AI. And basically, if I could summarize that, it's if we are going to use it, that we're going to provide instruction for students and staff on how it is to be used
I think
within
just
our school
moving
district.
forward, if we have a policy, obviously we could change the policy, but everything is new about AI in the business world, obviously in education, so.
Yes.
We just got to monitor that, and obviously we could change whatever we need to protect the kids and the students and such. Okay.
Yeah, I think John has,
Yeah, if I may, our firm has put together its own AI policy for our clients, and it's similar to PSBA's, but there are some differences which we could explain, but we'll provide both to you.
Okay.
yeah, we did, in looking at this one from PSBA, we did adopt it, the language, to modify it for us, so it does not lock us into doing anything. It didn't say like must, I mean, I changed it to may, so we're not locked into doing anything with
We
AI.
can adjust policies
Oh,
as
anytime.
we need to. We just have to start somewhere, and tonight's the
Correct.
starting point. Okay.
We needed to get something on our policy books to protect us.
Yep.
Thanks, we used that.
Any other discussion on those? Roll call, please.
Dr. Osherek?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goldble?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Right, under new business, update on the right to know requests are there for the 23-24 on page 61 and 62. The TASD Visa account is also there for your information, and the summary of Kelly Services substitute teacher rate is also there on page 66. Is there any discussion about any of those 3 items?
On the right to know request, who's FOIA Buddy? Is that like some organization that just requests right to know?
There actually was information put out by PSBA saying that if you get anonymous requests, like there's a whole bunch of legal language, that email that, it's basically one site statewide that people can go to, and they'll send out your right to knows for them. Now, they could choose to do it anonymously, or they could include their name. The person that sent it to us, their name and contact information was included.
Okay.
So we have to provide it.
Okay.
But basically, it's like one-stop shopping to submit right to know requests.
Can we add those, when there is a name, can we add it to the,
Oh,
Yeah, to the
can we
list.
put the names of who's? Yes,
yeah?
yes, we've gotten a barrage lately. And a lot of the ones that are coming from that specific account, from that person, Director Perbola, is they're sending them to every school district.
Yeah,
At
that's
least
what I
throughout IU-18.
Okay.
We had some big ones about some of our IT information, and we had to go through a big redaction process just to maintain security.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion about those 3 items? Moving along, number 4, recommend that a resolution be adopted to approve a final 24-25 school budget.
If I may, President Arnold.
You may.
Thank you. I am respectfully recommending that the board consider and approve a budget for 24-25, a final budget with a 2 mil increase. And my request is not tied to our upcoming solar project. Each mil equates to about $30 for the median household. Should the board approve that increase, we would still be passing a deficit budget. Right now, at a 0 mil budget, we would have a deficit of about $886,000. If we passed a 2 mil budget, there would still be approximately a $270,000 deficit. But I'm confident that we could cover that with our existing fund balance, and really that presenting and passing or close to a balanced budget should always be our goal. You know, thankfully, our reserve is really healthy. My team and I are very, very mindful with spending. We took advantage of higher interest rates, and we continue to take advantage of higher interest rates with our investing strategy. And our current fund balance is just over 10.2 million, and it's projected to increase by year's end. And it looks like our spending for this past school year will come in under expectations. You know, the passing of a 0, a 1, or a 2 mil budget will require us to use some of our fund balance. But that type of budgeting, if we do that every year, is going to create a significant hurdle for us in developing future budgets. You know, in preparing this budget, our team met almost daily for the last couple months to make sure that the budget we present for consideration is inclusive of all of our expenditures. You know, since April, when I came in with a $1.47 million deficit, you know, we were able to reduce it by $900,000. But just like every public school in Pennsylvania, cyber charter school cost, you know, hit us. It hit us over the last week, and it continues to be a challenge. You know, for this upcoming year, and I know I mentioned it, we have $3.2 million that is budgeted just for cyber charter costs. That money comes directly from local taxpayers. It's local tax dollars. You know, just this week, our cyber charters rates were received. It was like a gut punch. For a general education student now, for one of our general education students in a cyber charter, we will be billed $18,000. For a student with a disability, we will be billed $42,000 by the cyber charter. These significant increases, they're debilitating, and they're not financially sustainable. You know, prior to this week, when we got those rates, my request was to come and ask for a 1 mil increase. But because of cyber charter, additional revenue it's needed. And again, I'm asking everyone, contact your local, you know, reps, your state senators, and ask them to support reform. You know, again, this summer, we have a plan. We're calling every family that's in a cyber charter. We're going to do home visits. We're going to invite them into the schools. We're going to buy them coffee. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk to them. We want to show them everything we have to offer and see what questions they have. If they want to come out start by not disenrolling, but come in here for a period a day, we're going to do it, because ultimately I think once the kids are in the building, they'll come with us. We do dynamic things. And, you know, to help offset the costs, we were able to trim some staff that retired, but we're going to hit the wall on that. You know, we always seek out expertise. I'm not a financial professional, so we always ask for advice from financial professionals. You know, and one thing that was pointed out, and I've spoken to the board before about this, was, you know, all other things aside, you know, this is the last year we're being faced with the reduction in taxes from Procter & Gamble, so that almost forces our hand in addressing a millage increase. And overall, our costs go up every year. That happens. That's inflation. Go to the grocery store and you can see that. You know, here's the thing. Anytime that millage is not raised when it's needed, our financial problem will compound. I'll say it this way. We only have a few choices when costs go up. We either need to increase revenue, we need to increase class size, which is going to be a difficult conversation that's going to come sooner than later, or we have to eliminate student programs. You know, something has to give. And I could tell you that a 2 mil increase will help us maintain all current programming. And, you know, Director Burke pointed this out at the last board meeting, and I think it's important to reiterate. You know, historically, our district has been very conservative with tax increases, and that's a good thing for our families. Over the past 6 fiscal years, these last 6 years, inflation has increased almost 25%. The total tax increase in that same time has, over the same 6-year period, has gone up 10.7%. I mean, I think that shows the dedication of the board to maintaining, you know, affordability for the constituents. You know, we've spent wisely, keeping increases far below inflation. And my request this year does the same thing. You know, a $2 million increase comes very close to balancing a budget for next year. And for the median household, that would be an increase of about $60 per year. Now, the positive to this is the increase will be offset by the increase of the farmstead homestead credit this upcoming year. This year, the farmstead homestead credit, which is essentially state gaming money, it'll be about $373 for a household. Last year, it was $307 for the average household. That represents an average additional credit of about $66 for the median household. Therefore, an approved budget with a $2 million increase should make very little to no impact on the median household. And I'm going to say this, I know our fund balance is healthy, and we're doing some things to help generate revenue in future years, but we need to protect our fund balance. We can't get into the habit of paying daily operating expenses with our reserve fund. It just makes prudent sense, fiscal sense, to protect that. You know, my staff and I will work diligently to increase the fund balance just like we do every single year. And no matter what the board decides, tonight, we will do our best to come in under. That will always be my goal, no matter what the approved budget is. And in the event you do choose to pass a $2 million budget, you know, my goal will be that we don't spend every cent of it either. You know, if you look at our surrounding neighbors, our neighboring districts, you know, their intentions for millage increases and percentage increases, it's high. You know, it's high. This proposal, or my recommendation, it's modest. And there are districts that border us that are requesting significantly higher amounts. I am extremely proud of this budget that you're considering tonight. No matter what the decision is by the board, I will remain extremely proud. This was seemingly, it's the biggest deficit I'm coming with, but the work we did behind the scenes to get it to this amount, I'm very proud of my team. I'm very proud to present this $2 million budget for your consideration, and I'm confident that that can provide us with continued financial stability. Sorry I rambled. If I rambled too long, I thought it was important to put some things out there, but whatever the decision the board makes, we will do our best to make it work for the Tunkhannock Area School District. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, before we open discussion, do we have a motion for any of the budgets as presented? To see if we can get a second on it to then open.
The choices.
0, 1, 2, and 4?
0, 1, and 2 are the only ones that are in the packet.
0, 1, and 2.
Yeah.
So motion to approve a 2 mil budget.
There's a motion to approve a 2 mil. Is there a second? Okay, lack of second. That fails to move forward. Do we have another motion for the 0 or the 1?
Motion for 1 mil.
We have a motion for a 1
Second.
mil. We have a second for the 1 mil. That opens the floor for discussion.
So Paul, can you remind us again, 1 mil increase is how much, and what was the increase in the cyber school again?
The increase to cyber charter is $311,000. Mill is $309,000, but a collected mill is about $287,000.
Yeah.
$287,000.
Okay. So 1 mil increase basically covers cyber.
Correct.
That covers just the increase in cyber
Just the
charter.
increase in cyber, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, just the increase in cyber.
Correct. Like, we know that when we passed the professional staff contract, we talked about that on the floor, that was a $2 million annually. Tonight, you know, you're considering sports staff, between support staff and Act 93, that's another mill. So we know there's 3 mills of increases of just salary and benefits. Healthcare went up 8%. PSERS is, you know, still 34 cents out of every dollar of salary we still have to send to PSERS. The costs are significant.
So,
A 1 mil increase equates to 1.2% increase in millage.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that, Director Farr.
A 1 mil increase equates to a 1.2% increase
1.2%.
in our millage.
Correct. Yeah, a 1 mil increase equates to 1.2% of a tax increase, yes.
so just to build on a little bit of what Paul said, Paul, first of all, thank you to you and your team for putting together this budget. Versus the original, that deficit was brought down tremendously, and it's sad that we got that big increase in cyber charter, because we would have been pretty darn close with.
We would have been real close.
We've been close with a 1 mil increase, so that's really unfortunate. And so reaching out about House Bill 2370 to your local and state senators and representatives, I think is really important. As Paul said, with the, you know, it's difficult to make this work, and you only have so many levers you can turn. So if we're going to vote to approve support staff contracts, teachers' contracts with increases in salaries and benefits, the only place that we have leverage to be able to cover those costs is through local taxes. So, you know, I'd prefer to raise taxes zero. We do have that benefit that you said, if we did a 1 mil increase, that the taxpayers in our communities would still see on average about a $30 decrease in their taxes. And so the concern with walking by and doing a zero increase is that, you know, depending on what happens next year, this problem gets worse, and then we need to surprise people, and then we see a bigger jump in those taxes. So, you know, I think it's something we have to look at. The other thing is just from a evolution perspective. I've been on the board now for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, or maybe longer, I don't know. Is it really that long? Okay, so I've been on a while. And much of that time was focused on cost reduction. And that's never going to change. But I think we also need to start considering, you know, we talk about the taxpayers as stakeholders, which I totally agree with. I'm a taxpayer and a business owner in this community. We also need to balance what we're doing for students in the sense of, you know, we can't keep cutting costs, and cutting costs is the only thing year in and year out. You do notice that, you know, I think 5 or 6 years ago when we had retirements, we rarely backfilled them. Now we're backfilling half or more of those retirements because we just can't run the same programs that we do. And so, you know, 1 mil is probably too small of a tax increase to do ongoing, but my hope here is between the savings on solar that we have coming up, and then you cross your fingers for a little bit of cyber charter reform, that then we can start shifting the conversation to make sure we're improving the programs that we have, and that doesn't come for free. And then the other stakeholders are employees, and so, you know, we've agreed to and worked contracts that include, you know, what I feel like are modest and reasonable increases. You know, you can't ask people to come to work when inflation's averaged 25% over the last 6 years and not give them increases. And so I think a 1 mil would be a really modest thing for us to do, and a responsible thing for both taxpayers and our communities. Thank you.
Paul, if we, a 1 mil, and so just assuming that you couldn't find any more money to save, the fund balance decrease would be what? What's the gap?
It would be the equivalent of like $600,000.
$600,000.
Out of 10 million.
Yep. The other thing to keep in mind, we're going to dedicate $2 million to the solar work next year as a down payment. And,
Right.
if our fund balance does grow somewhat, so let's say we underspend that, you know, we really should be thinking about paying off that debt sooner, which increases the rate of return on the solar
Correct.
project.
I think our fund balance is going to come in, projection-wise, I think it's going to come in, if you look here, it says 12 million. I think it's going to come in just under 12 million. 2 million of that we're going to put as a down payment on solar, but we also have to front another 4 million until it gets turned on, the solar, and then we'll get that 4 million back.
Which is a huge advantage instead of taking a short-term loan at 5
Yeah.
or 6%, which, you know, that would
Right.
be super helpful.
But if we take a $4 million bond for the rest of the solar, we have the opportunity to almost pay that off immediately, because it's going to equivalent, and we would truly have solar savings then at that point, with no outstanding amount.
Plus the solar revenue from the SRECs.
Correct.
So, I mean, you know, what the bottom line in the checkbook is, if you're starting with 12 million and we pass a 1 mil increase, that reduces taxes because of the Homestead Act for taxpayers, then the fund balance goes down by half a million. That's just the math, right?
Ballpark, yep.
Ballpark.
If we spend every dime of that, yes.
Yeah, if you don't save any other money. yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So,
Right, if, for instance, a staff member goes out on sabbatical, and we don't have, and we could figure out a way not to fill that while they're out, then we truly save like half the salary. So we do a lot of creative things like that. When, if somebody goes out on a maternity leave, we try to be as creative as we can to cover that, because the only way to really save is personnel costs, because when 80% of it is tied to salary and benefits, the only way you're going to save any significant money is tied to personnel. I mean, and just to reiterate what Director Burke said, when I started here just 2.5 years ago, I think we had 197 teachers, and I think we finished last year with 171. So we are down like significantly just through attrition over the last 3 school years.
So if I can weigh in, I appreciate what everybody said, and John, I've been on the board 8 years, and I do understand about the slow increase. I will say, and I remember last year we passed the 1 mil, and I believe it was pretty close. And I know there was some trepidation with raising the taxes because over the last 3 years it's gone up 5 mils. And the last no tax raise was 2021, which was like the COVID timeframe. I will say I want to thank Paul and his administrative team. You guys have done a great job on the cuts. I know year after year we've talked about the attrition, and we're kind of running out of attrition. So I noticed there's not a whole heck of a lot of community in here tonight, and the one way to get the community in a lot of times is talk about changing the way we teach the kids. And I think we're going to be getting there sooner than later. Nobody wants taxes to go up. We still have a business to run, but we also have to understand that we talk about inflation. It's also inflation for the community members. I am not in favor of raising taxes this year for a lot of different reasons. I do want to continue to look at cost-cutting measures, and one of the things that we're going to have to take a serious look at as a board over the next year, 2, and 3 are how we deliver education, size of classes, various extracurricular programs. Those are the things that I think we're going to have to talk about. Not that I want to take anything away from the kids, but I just don't want to keep putting on the backs of the taxpayers. We do have contracts, and I know we're going to talk about a contract tonight, but we also have to, go to our employees and have them hopefully understand, where we're going and our fiscal responsibility to the taxpayers. So I just wanted to throw that out. I think, Paul, you and your team have done a fantastic job on cutting. I know that the fund balance has increased. I agree with everything that you said about the fund balance. We really want to keep that for the quote-unquote rainy day. I get it. I'm just in favor of maybe giving the taxpayers a break this year and not creating headaches down the line, but we're going to have to start having serious discussions about different programs, sizes of classes, schedules, compacting the number of students and, in a class, whether it's an AP class, honors class, those kinds of things. So that's all I have. Thank you.
And I don't want to banter back and forth, but at the same time, I think that if taxpayers receive a $30 decrease in their taxes, we're giving them a break and putting ourselves toward the place of being able to maintain programs. Because I agree with you, Doctor, that we will have tough conversations about, class sizes and stuff. I'd prefer to push that as far off in the future as we can and still deliver a $30 decrease in taxes.
Appreciate it.
There's 2 things I keep bouncing back and forth about. 5 days ago, I was set on coming in here to a 0. We talk about the numbers. For the last 6 years, inflation went up 25%, but our taxes only went up 10%, 10 point something percent. That is a direct result of things like the consolidation. Had we not taken those types of actions that were not hugely popular with the community at the time, I have no doubt that we would be at that 25% that inflation just is naturally sitting at. So I believe the board has been fiscally responsible and trying to continue to deliver high quality education for students. This cyber thing makes me really angry because I believe that cyber charter has a place. It is consistency for kids who move around a lot. It has opened doors to families who have split households to be able to have more shared custody, because a child can be in a consistent online program that they can do from anywhere. So they can go to moms and dads during the school year, and it's not limited to school breaks and vacation. I'm all for that. The problem I have is the fact that, to make this incredibly simple, it would be like walking down to Sherwood's and them telling you that we'll tell you the price of the car after you show us your tax return. Because depending on what you make, or what our district brings in taxes and what our district brings in from state funding, that's what's going to decide what you're going to pay for the same service that the next school district over is getting. That the children in that district are getting the same service and they're getting charged less. So when you talk about cyber charter reform, it is not about trying to put cyber charters out of business, because they serve an important part of the community. It is about making it more level playing field so that all districts are paying the same price for the same service to their students. So if this passes for a 1 mil increase and people are angry, be angry, but also take action, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because if it's based on how much we're spending and then they raise the price of it each year and we have to raise taxes in order to fund it, they're gonna get more the next year too. Like, it's gonna keep happening that way. So we have to raise taxes for inflation. They're gonna take a piece of that. They're taking a piece of it every single year of that increase. That increase does not 100% come to the district, because they're gonna come after their share. I'm not gonna name the school, but one of the cyber charters is doing so well that they basically have a whole reception area sponsorship of the Wilkes-Barre Arena. One of these schools in the state is set to have a $500 million fund balance this year or next year. Common sense cyber charter reform helps districts like ours. It helps our taxpayers. It will not put the cyber charters out of business or make them inaccessible for kids. And if that is what somebody tells you, they are mistaken. So please do contact them regardless of how this turns out tonight, because $3.2 million of our budget is going to go and fund that for 100 students in the district. That math doesn't add up. All that said, I don't even know how I'm going to vote yet, because I really wanted to come in here and say 0, but I also know that might not be sustainable, and it might come back to bite us because it's compounding. When you don't raise taxes in a year, it's not just that year of not raising taxes you don't get, it's that increase over the course of perpetuity. So I guess we'll see. I get to vote last, so we'll see which way I'm going to vote on that when it comes.
We should make you vote first.
So Paul, one other question. So if a 1 mil increase and you make no other changes, it was $600,000 out of the fund balance. A 0 mil increase, if you made no other changes, would be what again out of the fund balance?
886,000. If every dollar was spent.
So neither is sustainable.
Well, neither are sustainable if you want to hold the fund balance.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I mean, we could hope for people to go on unpaid leave. No, but I mean, we're going to work hard. I mean, our administrators, we just met about this yesterday, about the plans to go out in groups, and we're going to knock on doors. I mean, if for instance, 4 special education students or students with disabilities come back, I mean, that's the equivalent of $160,000. It goes a long way.
Or if you find out that they now live in Kentucky and don't even live in Pennsylvania anymore, which is something that's happened in our district before.
Correct. It's happened since I've been here.
Right.
We found, yes.
Which I'll have you know, there are cyber charters who actively fought school districts being able to verify that the students still actually live in the school district.
Every summer we do this, we go through the same, I guess, routine. Where we go out and we, shake hands and meet people and try to invite them in. My first year we did that, I did get a letter from one of the cyber charters telling us we couldn't do that. And I mean,
Well, right, because
no, we're going to do it.
they have a vested interest if they know that this school district, even if the student stays in Pennsylvania, if they know that this school district pays them $18,000 for a regular education student, but if you get down to like a Philly school district or another urban school district where they only might get $9,000 per student, they have a vested interest in making sure that that student stays rostered to Tunkhannock and not to whatever the other district is that pays half of what we do. Do we have more discussion, or do we want to throw this through the first round of voting? No, sorry, Bill. Okay, can we get a roll call on the proposal, or the?
$1 mill.
Yes, the 1 mil, the motion for a 1 mil tax increase. Then. Yeah, there was a
Yeah, I
motion
was
and a
second.
second here. Okay.
Dr. Pravola?
No.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
No.
Mrs. Eckert?
No.
Mr. Franco?
No.
Mrs. Goebel?
No.
Dr. Osherek?
No.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
No. Okay. So, do we have a motion for a zero?
Motion to approve a 0 mil tax increase.
Second.
Do we need discussion on this?
Well, there is no other choice.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So, can we get a roll call, please, on a zero?
Well, I think there's one important thing to say, though.
Okay.
Again, we've all thanked Paul and his team, and so it's not, this isn't about them not doing the good work, but I do think people need to be realized that if one of the things that comes back from this is we're gonna, I don't know, put the APs and the honors kids together because we're gonna have some other teacher teach, that's kind of the output. Could be the output, right? Not that that matters because it doesn't change staffing anyway, but there's hard decisions to make to find $800,000.
Like our next big decisions will be when someone retires from the, like for instance, from the
Yep.
primary center. We've had the luxury, and the board has always maintained class sizes of 18 to 20. Like, is that feasible? Because in many districts, that would be a rarity. But if we could reduce a position and move class sizes to 25,
So this potentially, Paul, and I'll just, if I may, it will look at staff size, just because of those issues. So, I mean,
Correct.
it's part of the whole cutting, increase
Correct.
class size, those
Correct.
kinds of
And,
things.
I mean,
not
looking
that we
at-
want to sell anybody short, but I think that's going to.
Right, looking at elective choices
It's
that-
going to bring these discussions to the table maybe sooner.
100%. And like when we have 100 elective choices, 104 electives in the high school, when we have every PIAA sport,
Right.
when that might have been feasible when we had 3,000 students, when we have 2,000 students, that may not be sustainable.
So just as, I think it's important as we were, like, as those things come forward, that you remind us, okay, and this is what the 800,000, this is the example of how we.
And that's
so people
something we may
remember
be
that.
discussing later this summer. I mean, typically, we do have staff that will resign and go to a new district that we did not expect over the summer. That seems to happen every year. If that happens, we might be coming for a discussion with that, it could be as soon as next month.
And so I think it's also important to have board members vote consistently. And so what I mean by that is we're going to vote on a support staff contract next that includes 3.5% increases in salaries. And so I want to vote yes on that, but if we don't ever raise tax revenue, we're going to have to look at contracts, because I will not be in favor of salary increases for people if we don't have revenue to cover it.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago that we were all sitting here having a conversation about the tennis courts, right?
Should have
Because-
voted no.
So, we're having the tennis courts redone, and
It's 2 mills.
somebody brought up a good point, I think it was just Dr. Rabola, about, the PIAA sports. I gave this example just a couple weeks ago at the boys volleyball banquet. Volleyball is a a legend in this district. Like, they've said that our gym was built for volleyball because it doesn't have the cross beams and stuff like that a lot of the other gyms build. Back in the 70s, they had a national championship. They barely fielded a team this year. And after last year going to districts, when you only have 2,000 kids in a district, you don't have the numbers to support having every sport. So there might be decisions that are going to come down in the next school year. Won't be volleyball this year, I'm telling you. But like after that, because my son's a senior, so we're just not going to do that. But these are the conversations we need to have when we're talking about $300,000 or whatever it ended up being for tennis courts or whatever other sports we have. Like, we have to start looking at these numbers, and if we can't bring together a competitive group to participate in these sports, there's coaches' salaries, there's transportation, there's equipment, there's uniforms, there's all these things, we're not going to be able to sustain that. So, something to keep in mind.
Generally, many of the sports don't add up to that much cost in total.
Until you're putting in new courts.
The
True.
cost now.
But they're already paid for now.
The cost now comes from transportation.
Right.
That's where a significant part of transporting teams. That's a huge part of it. Like, the coaching salary is negligible. It's the cost of transportation. It's the cost of equipment, depending on the sport, because that gets very expensive. But I think we have to look at numbers, and the ones that are dwindling, I think we have to have hard discussions, and I'm sure it will make some community members upset. But, you're right. This board went through consolidation and through some very difficult meetings, and I think we're going to have to start having those conversations. We can't continue to, run programming like we have 3,000 and 4,000 students.
That or families need to start having more babies. I don't know what to tell them. So, do we have any other discussion on a 0 mil? We have a motion, we have a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Burke?
Oh, sorry.
I made the motion.
I second it.
Yeah, Andrew and Laura both seconded it. Okay.
Mr. Burke?
No.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
No.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
I do want to thank the board. I know this isn't an easy discussion and an easy decision. I'll always work as hard as I can, and my team will always work as hard as we can to make sure that the difficult decisions that you're forced to make, that we'll make it work for the school district.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. All right, item number 5, recommend that the 24-25 Homestead Farmstead Resolution be adopted.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? This will ultimately bring everybody's tax bill down by 60 some, or?
For the average median for the median
additional,
household, it'd
yeah.
be at $66 approximately.
Okay, from what it was last year.
Correct.
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Motion to approve the 4-year contract between the Tunkhannock Area School District and the Tunkhannock Area Educational Support Personnel Association with we're going to add the language of with minor editorial changes. The term of the contract will be July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2028.
So you did add with minor editorial changes, correct?
Yes, I added that after the word association.
Gotcha.
Any motions?
Motion to approve.
Andrew, Paula? Any discussion?
What's the average increase in year-on-year salary that we're passing, or proposing to pass?
So 24-25, it's about 175,000 25-26 is 159,000. 26-27 is an additional 143,000. 27-28 is 103,000. The cumulative increase, Director Burke, is about 1.5 million through the life of the contract.
That's cumulative?
Yes.
Offset healthcare, their healthcare premium goes up,
Yeah.
contribution?
Every percent of healthcare is about 16,000 extra dollars. Half percent is 8,000.
But in this contract, there is a
Yes.
incremental per year, the
One-
employees are contributing to healthcare.
Correct. First year is 1.5, then 2, 2.5, ends at 3.
Each 0.5% is about $8,000.
Right.
It's essentially a $500,000 a year that we're committing to additionally. An additional $500,000 this year, and on top of that, an additional $500,000 the following year.
For the support, okay.
Just like the average percentage increase, though, so those are the numbers, Dr. Suppan. It looked like it's about 3.25-ish, 3.5, depending, different positions are different amounts. But essentially, it looks like a year-on-year increase of about 3 to 3.5, so. And I'm asking these questions because I think we need to make sure we're paying people competitively to keep those rates. I mean, we've been, in an environment where local wages have gone up, so I think it's important to try to retain the best people to do these jobs. But again, it's just back to our budget discussion. It's not free.
Paul?
Yes.
Could you just, for people that may not know, the support staff contract covers which, who specifically is that?
Oh, we should have put that out there. That's paraprofessionals. That's our nurses that are not certified school nurses, but our LPNs and our RNs. That's our maintenance. That's our custodians, our secretaries. I'm missing, not cafeteria any longer because that's going to Mets.
There's a couple random, like our copiers,
Yeah.
like our hall monitor was in there.
Business office.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Thank you for the work. I know that this has been months and months and months of work on the part of the negotiations team and admin and the team from the support staff. I'm glad that they were able to get this done in the nick of time here. With that, roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherik?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 7, motion to approve the elimination of the payroll clerk from the Support Staff Association and move Kristen Glynn to the new Act 93 position of Assistant Business Office Manager with a salary of $50,000.
I just want to point out that this was part of the negotiations process, and this was tied to, this position was used, we utilized this position in helping with negotiations, so it was no longer appropriate for it to remain within that association. And the association did agree to the removal of this position from their group.
Oh, we assume so, because I know we'll hear from them if they didn't, if we approve it.
Is the salary the same?
Is the salary the same?
No, the salary is increased. I want to say approximately, about $12,000. I don't know the exact amount offhand. I apologize. I should have had that. But there are additional duties being assigned to that person. They're going to oversee all of our our financial documents for federal programming.
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Didn't get any motions.
Oh, do we have a motion?
Second.
Is that Dr. Perbola?
Yes. All right, now can we get a roll call?
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherik?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 8, motion to approve a spring training field trip for our high school girls varsity softball team to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina in late March 2025. Specific dates to be finalized and communicated to the student athletes and their parents.
This is the most exciting thing on the agenda. I just want to point this out.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Do we know about how many days they'll be, like,
It's a handful of days. There's one specific week that last year there was 33 school districts from Pennsylvania that go to the same location. Essentially, they get to go there. They'll be there 4 or 5 days, but they'll play like 3 games, have 2 scrimmages. There'll be JV games there, and it's really just a wonderful opportunity. We don't have the dates finalized yet. It won't even be close to that. It just says, March. It'll be something reasonable, but it is the same time. Elk Lake goes every year also.
but I mean, like, and it's funded by the team or the
Oh,
parents?
yeah, it's
and,
funded
like,
by
and
the
all
Parents
that?
Club.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not district funded at all. But being that it's out of state,
Yep.
we wanted to put it in front of the board because that also gives, approving it way in advance gives them opportunity to fundraise.
Yep. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 9, motion to approve applications for payment as listed. We have 2 there, one for D&M Construction Unlimited and one to Scranton Electric Heating and Cooling.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Osherick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 10, motion to approve the resolution for the Tunkhannock Area School District to apply for the Public School Facility Improvement Grant to support the capital upgrading of the primary center. This is again just to apply for this thing that we've talked about before.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's going after roughly $3 million for the primary center.
Okay.
We're not committed to doing anything. We're just taking a shot at getting money for a capital project.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Didn't we vote on this last month?
Last
a
month
different
was-
one.
Last month was a budget grant for $5 million towards solar. This is a $3 million towards the PC.
Yeah, they're 2 separate grant opportunities. We're just throwing it out there.
We're just trying.
That'd be great.
Get that free money.
Oh.
Get
Roll
that
call,
free money.
please.
Law firm.
I'll tell you, Director Eckert, I asked him the same question. I said, why is this on here again twice? He goes, it's not.
So, and that, we don't, if this grant, this is to go after the grant, and you don't have to, you put in there what you want it to be for, or no?
There's maximum amounts. They're $5 million. We're going after the full $5 million for the solar.
Yeah.
The PC project, we're going after 3 just because part of the PC project with the feasibility study through Dewey years ago was $7 million. So we took that out and we're going after everything else, which is about 3.2.
What is the
Like,
is
it's
what?
like windows,
Oh.
stuff like that, in the PC
Okay.
that need to be replaced.
Okay. But this is just to apply for it. Got it.
Correct. Yeah,
Not spending any money.
no.
All right. Roll call, please.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherick?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Any opposition to taking the next 2 together? They're pretty standard.
I'm fine with that.
Yep.
All right, can we get a motion for item 11, motion to approve insurance coverage for the 24-25 school year with Assured Partners as presented, and item 12, motion to approve the bus and van contracts as presented.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Any opposition to joining together 13 and 14? Item 13, motion to approve a memorandum of understanding between TASD and Hands of Lyman County for lease of classroom space for pre-K counts, for PA pre-K counts in the amount of $10,000 in the former Mahogany Elementary School. Lease term July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025, contingent on approval of PA pre-counts funding. And item 14 is motion to approve a healthcare staffing agreement between TASD and Interim Home Health Care Services for the 24-25 school year.
I'll just point out that for 13, we do it every year. That's the same one that we've been doing for years. In 14 is, I believe, in case we need nursing services, that we're short nurses and we have to bring in substitutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
yes,
Dr. Osherek?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
yes,
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. And the last item, motion to approve the upgrade purchase of Board Docs LT in the amount of $2,700. That is a program that will be used down the road. The board is going to be going paperless, so we're not going to have these piles of paper and papers everywhere. Everything's going to turn to a digital thing, which will save us time and money in the long run. So that's just that software to do the board docs. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckerd?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
yes,
Dr. Osherek?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
sure.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. All right. With that, do we have any additional public comment for this evening? We voted them together. 11 and 12 were voted together, and 13 and 14. We thought you might have been here long enough tonight, and those were pretty standard. We'll just clump them together.
My understanding on the homestead farmstead, that only applies to a person who owns their own home, not renters. And if you own more than one home, you'd only get it under the home you live in. So that doesn't go to everybody. And I was at Lisa Baker's office the other day in Dallas. I had a couple issues. One of them, there's a bill started. The Senate wants to raise minimum wage to $20 an hour. And I was told she would not be for that. But if anything like that, if that goes up, say more than 12 bucks an hour, it's going to put a lot of your mom and pop stores out of business. A lot of them are paying 10 and they're struggling. I mean, really struggling. Now, Holly, last month you said at the end of the meeting if I had a comment. Yeah, I do now. I'm about 2 weeks behind in my paper reading.
Oh, no, okay.
My fifth grade teacher passed away. Does anybody have any idea who it could have been? His name was Patrick Charney. He taught over in the old Skrinsky building. There, he's my fifth grade teacher. He taught many years here. Let's see. There was other stuff, but I can't. Someday you'll get this old and remember.
Probably
Bill, did
sooner
you
than
talk
later.
to Senator Baker about the cyber school?
I didn't this time, but
So
I
get
have.
over there, let's go.
I had other issues. I take as many as I can at the time. And
I
they-
got you, buddy.
They tell me, I'm in there quite a bit.
Good.
Any other public comment on anything?
I believe Lisa Baker, or not Lisa Baker, Tina Pickett voted against this reform, correct?
That is true.
But it's now before the Senate, right? Is that, so Lisa Baker would be the one for all the taxpayers to contact and request the cyber charter support. Was it House Bill 20, what was the number? 2370. So before anybody comes up and complains about us cutting or anything like that, that's what I'm going to ask them. Did you go to Senator Baker and ask her about the cyber reform?
Yeah, if that bill were passed as it's written, that would make it so that all school districts, of course there could be edits, but like all school districts would pay $8,000 for a regular education student and like $13,000 for a special ed student. And there might be provisions like, because there's different degrees of severity with the needs of a special ed student. So a student who might only need speech services maybe is only $13,000, but if they're blind or deaf or have other like higher level, they need more therapies, then, you know, perhaps that would be more. Maybe that was a poor example, but that wasn't intentional.
If cyber charter reform happens,
Right.
we alone will save $1 million a year.
Well, over that, because that
Over
would
that.
cut our costs more than half. So it would go from the 3.2 million that we're
Yes.
budgeting for next year now, down to, 1.6.
Correct. Like, we're looking at like 4, 5, 6 mils, like that this could potentially impact us
Right.
to the good.
Yeah. So, and that is if nothing changed. If no kid ever came back to Tunkhannock from a cyber charter and our numbers stayed exactly where they are and everybody's happy except apparently the people who would be getting the bonuses and filling up the savings accounts at the cyber charters. But, and maybe, I don't know, maybe the arena because maybe they wouldn't be able to afford that anymore. But education wouldn't suffer for those kids. We would save 1.6 million. And if we get cyber charter reform, I will swear here on this spot that I would not raise taxes for at least a year or two after that, because of how much we would save.
Politicians should
Motion
never
to
swear
adjourn.
God that
No,
they're gonna do
motion to
something.
adjourn.